So we were talking earlier this hour about Governor J.B. Pritzker on national news, essentially calling some local school board candidates either book banners or trying to cast them as racists. And this is something he did on national television. What's really going on with these books? And also, what do we need to do for protecting children and you on the internet and beyond? To talk about those issues and more, joining me right now is somebody who I think is going to be a regular guest, because Mark, you seem to be ready to talk about some controversial issues, and I appreciate that. Thanks for taking time. Mark Hurley, a retired Air Force National Guard colonel.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine this morning.
Good to hear. So, wanted to get your reaction to some of what you heard Governor J.B. Pritzker say on national TV about seeming to say Ron DeSantis is a book banner, and there's others in Illinois that want to ban books. What's going on here?
I really want to encourage people to go back and actually read 1984 by George Orwell, and read Animal Farm by George Orwell, and read Fahrenheit 451. That's probably more important for this particular discussion.
Ray Bradbury.
It's amazing to me how we've become used to politicians saying one thing and then doing another. I don't want to overlook either the Hillsdale College has free online videos and courses that a lot of people can look at and watch. If you're getting to be my age where your eyes start to go on you and you don't want to read as much, but you're into the video side of things, they are absolutely phenomenal. In fact, they've got one going now which is talking about Fauci's background, Dr. Fauci's background, talking about the American health system and the problems that we encountered over the last 2 years. And I'd like to remind your viewers that what we just went through with COVID was a total abuse of our Bill of Rights. And that's what led us into then the discussion about a digital Bill of Rights coming up. But just to remind all your listeners that, we went through, everybody knows that our speech was suppressed by both corporate entities and government entities. Everybody knows that churches were shut down, right? Businesses were shut down.
I followed those lawsuits. I followed, and there's still some pending lawsuits. Can the governor just say, hey, you can only have 50 people in your establishments if there's, a certain level of COVID cases? Hey, you can only open this store if there's a certain emergency that's declared. We've covered those. Schools were shut down. As you said, people weren't able to freely associate with others, as is the First Amendment right when it comes to religion or other gatherings. Doesn't matter if it's a church or not. They suppressed a lot of that out of what? Was it fear?
I think they wanted to test their ability to control. One of the courses on Hillsdale College talks about the new left, and they simply don't believe in our constitutional form of government. They believe in a visionary at the top and then a bureaucracy that will both write the rules and then also be the prosecutor and then the judge and the jury. And for those of us who have seen changes over time, 30 years, what we're finding is agencies are no longer public servants. They're not serving you properly. Instead, they become controlling agents and authoritarian agents, and they basically direct you that, you have to do this, right? And so we need to start moving away from that, particularly when, as the internet grows, we've seen it go from search engines, we've seen it to go to email, then social media, which is basically our own personal history that we put up there. Yeah. Now it's about to jump into finances and decentralized finance. And so we have to make sure that our finances are seen and our own data is seen as our personal data. right? That it's not seen as some platform's data or some government entity's data. These are our records. These are our histories. This is our finances, and we need to have protections in place that will help us down the road to prevent authoritarian and tyrannical type of regimes.
Well, I want to talk more about the Digital Bill of Rights coming up here in a bit. Of course, we're talking with Mark Hurley. He is a retired Air Force National Guard colonel. Now retired, he can speak freely about these and other issues. Last time we chatted with you, we talked about the vaccine mandates that were ultimately lifted. Still getting some more information on that, so I'll definitely be talking about that in the future. But on this issue of books, talk about, I guess, should there be some kind of restrictions on what books are available in schools? Because it seems that a lot of the pushback is some sexual content that might be in some public libraries, in school libraries, not public libraries necessarily, but in school libraries, and also the idea of, I'm sure you're familiar with that, what is it, the 1618 project? That 1619 project. You are familiar with it. So should there be some of these things in schools, or should there be instead an open, debate about maybe some of the themes that are behind all of that?
Absolutely. There should be an appropriate grade level reading set. And I think that what we've gotten to is there are some that are pushing sexual material down to a lower age, which is creating problems for us. That's the importance of having parents involved. That's the importance of having a community decision on what do we think should be in the classroom for a third grader, for instance, versus a seventh grader. I think we're pretty much all believers that yes, our children need to be educated, but it has to be the right stuff at the right level over time.
So when people talk about prohibiting material and making sure that's age appropriate, the other side might say, well, that's what we're doing too. We want to make sure it's age appropriate material. Do you think they'll be more open to, if they're all about having books of all kinds, will they require reading of Ayn Rand, for instance, and Atlas Shrugged, for instance, or, some book by Ron Paul about economics? Or you think they'd be okay with the local school board mandating those things to be taught?
I think that what will happen is over time you're going to see, in China, for instance, what happened. They removed books, right? And that's the same thing with their COVID shutdowns, right? They locked people in their houses. They couldn't get food. Their animals weren't allowed to get food and weren't allowed to roam the streets or do anything of that nature. And that's typically what happens with authoritarian type of controlling government types is, they put the fear in the populace so that they give a rationale and then they turn around and just clamp down. And it's the same thing with the book discussion. He's trying to put fear, because Ron DeSantis needs some time to get his name out there and what he stands for, right? And let's face it, it really does look like, if President Biden just chooses not to run, that you've got Newsom and Pritzker and the Michigan governor, Whitmer, thank you, as pretty much the leads, right? So they're getting out there, they're getting their name recognition.
And one way to do that is to start casting whole groups of people as racist or bigots, and we'll see that play on. Mark Hurley with us. Going to take a break, but I want to come back and give you the floor to lay out the importance of a digital Bill of Rights. So we'll do that next here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk, now 750 from Culver's West on Wabash.
It's time to apply at Culver.
In which we used satellites, and we used ground-based radars, and we used a lot of equipment that it's classified that I can't really go into too much. But one of the things that we learned through all that process was that there's what's called blockchain out there, and blockchain is basically a set of computer code within a block And then over time, when you produce it again, then it becomes a chain. Okay. Well, blockchain has the capability of really transforming the insurance agencies and what they do, and transforming real estate and transforming banking, because it has the ability to use a consensus model. So you don't have just one person watching over it to say, or one entity saying this is accurate. You've got 6 entities overlooking it, and it does it very rapidly. So what ends up happening then is when you start applying this to the real world, it really will start affecting our financial life. And unfortunately, it also has the ability then to be controlled by one entity, depending on how, like if you produce central bank digital currencies, or if you produce, rather than a Bitcoin, for instance, Bitcoin, which then is not controllable the way it's designed, but there are other altcoins out there that are controllable as they're designed. So a combination of those things. And one of the things that all of a sudden just cropped up and really sort of shocked me was I was reading where if you combine some of the facial recognition technology along with a central bank digital currency, they could then prevent you from donating to your favorite candidate, or flying to a certain location,
or getting on a subway, or
Exactly.
a whole host of other things.
Yeah.
And this decentralized theme, are you worried that it's going to be centralized? And especially as we march towards more artificial intelligence, we've got about a minute.
I got about a minute. Okay, so yeah, that's the importance of what we're talking about, is we have to make sure that our Bill of Rights is incorporated in everything that they are looking at now. And some of the artificial intelligence Bill of Rights that are out there that came from the White House was, we have to be protected from ineffective systems. We have to be protected from algorithms that can discriminate against us. We have to have specific control over our data. We have to be given notice of when they're transferring our data to another location. We have to have the ability to opt out of any system that we want to opt out of. We have to have an ability to remedy problems within the data set. And unfortunately, we're just not designed that way right now. And so you're seeing things like legislation here in Springfield even. They're looking at the biometric privacy laws, which is basically facial recognition, voice recognition, fingerprints, that type of thing. And that's because businesses are being sued. And so we need to help the small businesses so that they don't constantly get sued and then basically go out of business when that happens. And so they're looking at making adjustments at this point. And so we just really need to watch this very carefully. And now's the time to do it, because we know the central banks in the U.S. are already doing this. We know that the European Union already has a strategic plan in place. We know that Russia and China already have their cryptocurrencies in place and central bank digital currencies in place. And so we just have to be very cautious of the way we proceed here. And I know that there are legislators on the Hill, like Senator Haggerty, Senator Tim Scott. They are looking, in Washington as well. But we also have to watch here in Springfield as well.
And I think it's a conversation that we're not having enough of, and that is about a digital Bill of Rights. We've had the internet around for decades now. We need to have this conversation, especially with all the blockchain technology and whether or not it's going to be centralized or decentralized. Mark Hurley, retired Air Force Colonel, thank you so much for taking time with us. It's all the time we've got, but we'll connect again and talk about this and other issues, all right?
Thank you much.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk on 92.7 FM WMAY Springfield.
Breaking his silence nearly a year after Will